Africa is not the story they told us, it's the story we forgot to tell ourselves. Masterminds presents Untold Africa, where we rediscover the brilliance buried beneath the sands of time. Did you know that the world's oldest university wasn't built in Europe, but in Africa, nearly 1,000 years before Oxford? Let me tell you a story about a city buried in sand, where books were worth more than gold, and students traveled across deserts just to sit on the ground and listen to a teacher. It's not in Europe, it's not in the Middle East, it's in Africa, a place called Timbuktu. Centuries ago, when Europe was deep in its dark ages, Timbuktu was shining, a city buzzing with trade, ideas, and conversation. Merchants carried salt, gold, and ivory, but the most valuable thing that moved through its gates was knowledge. Timbuktu sat at the meeting point between the Sahara Desert and the Niger River, a perfect location. Caravans from the north brought salt, paper, and silk. From the south came gold and ivory. The traders stayed, the scholars followed, and soon the city grew into something incredible. And in the middle of it all stood Sankoré, not just a mosque, but a full university. Imagine this: 3,000 teachers, 25,000 students, all studying in open courtyards. They debated law, astronomy, medicine, mathematics, and everything. The professors used sand as chalkboards, writing lessons on the ground. Back then, owning books in Europe made you elite. In Timbuktu, books were traded like treasure. You could buy gold by weight, but a single rare manuscript could cost you more than both your camels. And among these scholars was a man named Ahmed Baba. They called him the Walking Library. He had more than 1,600 books at a time when kings in Europe barely owned 10. By the late 1500s, Morocco was desperate for control of West Africa's gold trade, and Timbuktu sat at the heart of the roots that powered empires. When Morocco invaded in 1591, they captured him and took his collection. And you can almost imagine his heartbreak watching soldiers pack up centuries of African wisdom into boxes, not realizing they were robbing the world and not just a man. But here's what they didn't destroy: the idea. Families hid manuscripts under their homes, behind walls, even buried them in sand. They protected them like sacred relics because they knew this was proof of who they were. When the colonizers finally arrived years later, they said Africa had no history, no written record, no knowledge worth preserving. They never looked close enough. Even today, thousands of those manuscripts still exist. Books on law, trade, physics, surgery, philosophy, all written in Arabic, Songhay, and other African languages. Each one is a voice from the past whispering, "We were thinking long before you started writing about us." So next time someone says Africa was a dark continent, remember this: when Europe was burning witches for practicing science, Africa was mapping the stars and debating medicine in the sun. Timbuktu was not a myth, it was a movement, living example of what happens when Africans believe knowledge is power. Our ancestors didn't just build cities, they built ideas, and those ideas still live, buried under dust, waiting for us to pick them up again. This is Untold Africa, and remember, you come from greatness.